Dale un poquito de zoom, centro la gente. Ok.
Khemvirg Puente. En el marco de este seminario, que lo intitulamos El futuro de la democracia mexicana, nos interesa conocer otros casos que han tenido experiencias similares de involución democrática y en algunos casos de redemocratización. Nos interesó mucho hacer esta sesión con el profesor Adam Szymański de la Universidad de Varsovia, porque en Polonia han tenido un proceso muy similar al caso mexicano, en donde, como ustedes van a escuchar seguramente del profesor Szymański, pues las democratizaciones no son tersas ni son inerciales, sino que son casi siempre productos de avances y retrocesos y de luchas permanentes por las libertades y los derechos. Entonces, hemos invitado al profesor Szymański, que teníamos la intención de que estuviera en la Ciudad de México. No se pudo en esta ocasión, pero bueno, estamos comprometiéndole para que el próximo año sí pueda acompañarnos. Además, va a ser una buena ocasión para que practiquemos nuestro inglés, porque la sesión va a ser en inglés y las preguntas que ustedes elaboren también, les agradeceremos que las hagan en inglés. Así que bueno, iniciemos. Adam, good morning. It's a pleasure to have you here at the Institute, at the Social Research Institute at UNAM. We are here with graduate and undergraduate students, and here is with us Professor Sylvia Inclán, who is also the academic secretary of this institute. Thank you, Sylvia, for being with us. And I think we will introduce Professor Szymański, just saying that he's an associate professor at the University of Warsaw, and he's an expert on democratization and desdemocratization and autocratization. We have collaborated before in research committee of legislative studies at the International Political Science Association, and sooner we'll have a book edited with a colleague from the United States. So thank you, Adam, for being with us. If it's okay with you, we'll have like 30 minutes with your lecture, and the rest of the time some questions and comments from our students. So thank you, Adam.
Thank you very much, Khemvirg. I would like to welcome all of you. It's nice to deliver this lecture for you all. It's a pity that I could not come personally, but at least we can use Zoom to do this. As your professor said, I would like to talk about, to tell you a little bit about the case of Poland. Although I don't speak Spanish, I understood more or less what Khemvirg said about some maybe similarities or some processes that are quite similar in Mexico and what we can also observe in Poland. So probably you will see this quite a lot of similarities. Okay, so without further delay, maybe I will start the presentation. All right, I will just make the full screen. So I hope you see everything. I mean, you see the presentation. All right. So first, I would like just to outline briefly what will be the content of this short lecture. So first, I would like just to very briefly explain what I mean by democratic backsliding in our lecture. Then I would like to talk about democratic backsliding that happened in Poland at national level. But then I would like also to tell you a little bit about this process of democratic backsliding on de-democratization below the national level, so at the level of regions and cities in Poland. At the end of this short lecture, I would like to tell you about some relationship between these levels. So how, first of all, how what is going on at national level influences the changes at this lower territorial levels. Okay. So first, just very briefly, what is democratic backsliding? How I understand it, at least when it comes to our lecture. When it comes to when we just limit our story to the national level, then actually this democratic backsliding would be a deterioration of so-called liberal model of democracy, which means that there is a deterioration when it comes to such issues like fair and competitive elections, when it comes to respect for the basic freedoms and rights, that there is lack of respect for rule of law, and also the executive power is not constrained somehow by other branches of power. Okay, so this is what I'm following here the Videm Institute in Göteborg in Sweden, this kind of understanding of liberal model of democracy. But I don't want to limit the definition and understanding just to this deterioration of liberal model of democracy, because when we talk about democracy at lower levels, like I mean, in cities, in municipalities, in regions, in federal states, of course. Also, this about states, also in at the level below the national level. So when we take this into consideration, I think what is also important is we have to take into consideration other models of democracy, which also are taken into consideration by the Videm Institute, working extensively on democracy and democratization. So participatory democracy is one of these models that should be taken into consideration. Just to underline, this is this model that, of course, is not something that is completely separate from liberal model of democracy, but this is the model that underlines this participatory elements of democracy, including the role of local and regional government. Yes, so we have to take this into consideration when we want to talk about democracy at regional and local level. Plus something that is now very much discussed. You could also, if you are political science students, you could read also about something which is called deliberative democracy, which, to make the story short, at the local or regional level is first of all about development of different tools for people to be involved in governance, in decision making, also at the local and regional level. For example, it is about different forms of consultations that should take place between the local government, for example, and inhabitants of a city. Okay, like for example, Mexico City, the local authorities should consult different issues before making decisions with the people living in the city. Right, so we don't limit this understanding of democracy or just to liberal model of democracy. And also when we talk about democratic backsliding, it is not just about deterioration of liberal model of democracy, but also these two others that I mentioned. All right. Now, when it comes to Poland, to the main, I'm coming to the main topic. You have to know that Poland, after the Second World War, for many years, had a communist or socialist regime and was part of this Eastern Bloc of countries connected with, first of all, of course, with Soviet Union, but also other countries of this bloc. We could not talk about democratic political regime at that time. Yes, so until 1989, it was the situation. First, in 1989, everything changed. Yes, so what started was the process of democratic transition from non-democratic regime to democratic regime. There are different discussions, there are different opinions how long this democratic transition or how many years should be taken into consideration. But generally speaking, usually there is a talk about the period 1989-1992. Yes, this 1989 was the first there were first partially democratic elections. 1992, the small constitution was adopted. Small constitution because it was not the full constitution, it was a short document, first of all, regulated relationship between different powers, executive power, legislative power, and judiciary power. First, in 1997, Poland adopted the full constitution, which actually works until now, with many amendments, of course. After this democratic transition from non-democratic regime to democratic regime, we had the period what is called democratic consolidation. What does it mean? It means that already the democratic institutions were established. They work more or less, but what is needed is to consolidate democracy, on the one hand, to make this institution stable and really democratic. On the other hand, what is also important is that also people, both elites and society, have to be sure that democracy is the only game in town. But I mean, it is about positive attitudes that should be developed among elites and society. So both from institutional point of view, but also when it comes to people, the democracy was in this process of consolidation. And what helped here, as you probably know, Poland now is the member of European Union and NATO alliance. But at this time, between 1993 and actually in case of NATO 1999, in case of EU 2004, Poland was in this accession process to the EU and NATO, which was helpful to improve democracy, because the requirement to be member of the EU and NATO is to have a democratic country. Yes, and it was until 1990. It was until 2005. But what happened afterwards was the process of democratic backsliding, the deterioration at the national level, because now I'm talking about national level, so the central level, in territorial level in Poland. What started was this deterioration of liberal model of democracy. It was related to rule of Law and Justice Party, right-oriented conservative party led by Jarosław Kaczyński, whose photo you have on the right on this slide. And it is very much when you look at the figure that you have also on the slide, you will see that this line is going down in 2015, which means that there is some deterioration of liberal democracy. First, in 2023, we have a slight reverse process. This is not maybe so much visible here, but it was because since December 2023, there has been the new government in Poland, built by several parties that were in opposition to law and justice, that governed during this time of democratic backsliding. The question is, of course, what this democracy looked like in case of Poland, how this process of democratic backsliding looked at the national level between 2015 and 2023. And what I would like to underline, first of all, that it was first of all about this process which is called executive aggrandizement. It means simply that the executive power was strengthened at the cost of other branches of power. So first of all, the Council of Ministers with Prime Minister and the party represented by the government, so Law and Justice, first of all. There were some small coalition partners, but Law and Justice played the key role. Actually, the power of executive power incumbents and governing party was extensively strengthened, and the parliament, and particularly opposition in the parliament, was weaker and weaker. The same was actually with judiciary power, that was more and more under the control of incumbents, governing politicians, and Law and Justice Party. It meant that actually they were taken under the control, and many people that began to be members of the highest courts, Constitutional Court or Supreme Court, were actually people related to Law and Justice. So we could talk about the politicization of judiciary institutions. What is more, the public media were taken over by the government, and they began a kind of propaganda tool for the government. We could observe discrimination of some civil society organizations if they didn't represent from ideological point of view the conservative point of view. And moreover, what happened was what started was a kind of recentralization process when it comes to policy of a government towards local and regional authorities. It meant taking the competences, cutting funds for these local regional communities, and also arbitrary transfer of money to the communities, local and regional communities that were governed by the governing party, Law and Justice. And it reflected at the same time something that is also very important part of the democratization, democratic backsliding in Poland, which is political polarization. And actually you see here this line which is always going up, which means actually that this political polarization didn't start in 2015. It started earlier and was related to a kind of political conflict between two main parties, between Law and Justice that I mentioned that governed between 2015 and 2023 during this democratic backsliding period, and another party that now is the main party in the government since December 2023, which is a so-called Civic Coalition. And what is quite interesting, you have the map, maybe it is not so much visible, but this division, of course, we have a division between the supporters of Civic Coalition and Law and Justice. The division that are also present in society, Polish society, even within single families, yes. Some divisions when it comes to support for one another party, which very often leads to the situation that there's a conflict in the families because they support different parties, one or the other. But this division is also geographic division at the same time, because actually in elections usually see, this is the map of Poland, and the southeastern and eastern part of Poland govern the supporters of Law and Justice, while the western part of the country and northwestern part of the country is actually with domination of supporters of Civic Platform, the party that governs nowadays. All right. The question is, these are the main elements that are the most important when it comes to democratic backsliding in Poland in national level. So this executive aggrandizement, so extensive strengthening of executive power at the cost of legislative and judiciary power, and demolishing of checks and balance system, which means that the incumbents, the government, wants to minimize the role and control mechanisms of any possible institutions and bodies to, of course, to strengthen and consolidate its power. What are the reasons for this democratic backsliding? Generally speaking, there is no one reason for this, and actually, what matters here are on the one hand institutions that actually were evolved after 1989, after this political transformation in Poland from communist to non-communist system. These institutions evolved in such direction that they created a kind of fertile breeding ground for some undemocratic changes. It was related with a decreasing number of parties in the parliament, in development of so-called majoritarianism. That meant that actually the party that governs or parties that governed are doing everything what they want to do, and the opposition cannot do much. And this institutional factor or structural factor that also mattered was this development of two blocks the development of a party system with two main parties that play a role. I mentioned these parties: Law and Justice, conservative parties, right-wing conservative party, and Civic Platform, more center-oriented party, a little bit liberal, but there are some divisions also in this party. But apart from this, what plays a role in this democratic backsliding is something that I mentioned already, that to consolidate democracy, it is important that people have positive attitudes towards democracy. But in case of Poland, the problem is that although there is support generally for democracy and democratic rules, when people are asked about what is more important for democracy, or for example, a good economic situation, that people have money and a job and so on, they will choose the second option, which shows that actually there is some problem, first of all, with understanding of importance of democratic institutions, which matters, of course, because it leads also to some vote choices, yes, and voting for populist parties and so on. But it was not only this what played the role. What played the role as well was the dissatisfaction with this political and economic transformation in Poland. I mean, many people were dissatisfied with what happened after the transformation, because they expected to have a good job, a good life, and so on. But unfortunately, it was, I mean, the life was not so rosy, and many people felt themselves losers of this political and economic transformation, which for many people was related also with the impact of working of this liberal model of democracy. For many people, it was as something that was behind actually the lack of meeting the expectations of people. And of course, it is more complex. We can talk about some psychological factors that play a role. There are also some psychological books on this, but let's leave it. All right, I can tell you, of course, more if there will be some questions later on. Now, I said at the beginning that I don't want to talk about democracy in Poland just at national level, because so far what I told you, it is it was about democracy at national level. But to see a kind of full picture when it comes to democracy in any country, including here Poland, we should also go a little bit lower. We should go to regional level, to regions. We should go even lower to local communities and to the level of cities also, of the small cities, big cities, and so on. Because democracy works also there, or does not work. In case of Poland, you have to know that actually, when we talk about this democratic backsliding at national level since 2015, many problems with democracy that were even that were not noticeable at the national level were present at local and regional level long before 2015. So in this case, actually, we can see that actually many deficits, democratic deficits, were present for a long time at regional and local level in Poland, which actually showed that actually this process of political transformation and democratization in Poland at these lower levels has some deficits. The most important ones are firstly the problem with competitiveness of elections. When it comes to small cities, particularly villages, small cities, small towns, very often, in many cases, the problem is that we cannot talk about competitive elections because there is no competition, because there is very often one candidate, which of course we cannot talk about any competition here. And this is very often the result of a kind of long-term process of consolidation of power and resources, including money, by local politicians who are mayors in the cities, first of all. This is a kind of process, a kind of extensive strengthening of executive power at the local, first of all, level that I talked about also in case of national level. But here, this is a kind of long-term process, and when we take into consideration that since 2002, mayors of cities are elected directly by the people, and until 2018, there was no limitation when it comes to how long somebody can be mayor. It led to such a situation that even to some records, like in one of the towns in Mazovian province in Poland, so this is the central part of Poland, the record was broken by one of politicians who was a mayor between 1991 and 2024. So for many years. And of course, it was a kind of process that After winning the next elections, of course, this power and resources was strengthened of the mayor, which also enabled him to win the next elections. Okay, because of having extra resources, having different, having also administration to disposal that also takes part in election campaign. Actually, it leads to the situation that the next and the next elections can be won by this politicians. And on the other hand, the problem is at the subnational level that the councils, also elected directly, I mean, with legislative bodies, both at local and regional level in Poland, because in Poland we have actually many different bodies and offices elected by the people. First of all, at the local level, yes, and actually these legislative bodies that should adopt law at local or regional level, they're quite weak. They're quite weak. Their competences are limited. And they cannot control these mayors, yes, or presidents, because in Poland you have to differentiate between mayors and presidents, because presidents are the heads of executives in the biggest cities, in big cities, while mayors, when there is this different terminology in Polish system, are in smaller towns. So they actually very often they dominate over the legislative bodies. Yes, again showing the lack of a kind of balance of power here. Although, and here you have some pictures from one of the cities in which actually I live, which is Otwock, near the capital city, Warsaw, where actually there is another situation, because actually there's a kind of consensus between opposition and the president of a city, and which shows that it is not always the same picture, yes, but sometimes there's not always the same scenario. But because it is not always so that the president or mayor is doing everything and the opposition in the council, in this legislative body, cannot do anything. No, in some cities there are some mechanisms, very often informal, that leads to the situation that before the meeting, before the session of the council, the agenda is discussed between all political forces, and they want to come to a kind of agreement before the session. So this does not take place in all cities, but there are quite a lot of cases in which this happens. It shows that at the local level, there is sometimes such a situation that this political conflict and competition is not so important. Particularly, it concerns smaller cities when not necessarily political parties play a role, but by some local committees. Sometimes they are really independent. They are not related with any party. Sometimes these local communities are in fact related to political parties or under the influence of political parties, but very often they are not. So, and then very often this consensual culture, dialogue, and coming to a kind of agreement on many issues is possible. And we have in Poland, in many cities, the development, we observe the development of different democratic mechanisms. It is about different types of consultations. You have here the picture from one of the cities in the southern part of Poland, the picture showing consultation in so-called urban lab. So it is a kind of set of meetings with inhabitants of a city to talk about participatory budgeting for particular year. So about the projects that are proposed by people, and then the winning projects are implemented. When it comes to doing different things in the cities, I know, sport fields and so on. The problem with this different consultations, participatory budgeting, and other forms, thanks to which inhabitants who live in cities can take part in decision-making process, can be involved in life of a city. And the problem is that very often these mechanisms, on the one hand, are instrumentalized by politicians. And at the end of the day, for example, there are consultations, but consultations are used just to delay the decision on controversial issue. But at the end of the day, even if people are consulted and present their point of view, this point of view is not taken into consideration. It happens quite often, which of course leads to a kind of frustration, yes, among people if they see that actually they are not treated seriously, that actually they are consulted, but they're just used instrumentally by politicians, and at the end of the day they are not heard. And when politicians themselves express clearly that they do not pay so much attention, they don't think this local democracy mechanisms like participatory budgeting, consultations, and so on are necessary, then of course it also leads to a kind of lower and lower willingness of people to participate in all of this. And we see this, you have on the right figure showing that, of course, in some countries, in some cities, there is a kind of rising tendency when it comes to number of people who vote for participatory budgeting projects. But for example, in capital city, in Warsaw, the biggest city in Polska, this is the capital city at the same time, we see that after some first years of high interest in participatory budgeting, after this we have a decline. Because, as I said, I mean, this is, I mean, to some extent, or to large extent, it is because of how politicians treat these mechanisms. In Poland, in big cities, such mechanisms like participatory budgeting, so it is about proposing, once again, projects by inhabitants, and then the winning projects are implemented. But in Polish law, in big cities, this participatory budgeting is obligatory, and it is organized. But it is organized not because politicians love democracy, but because they have to do it because they are obliged by law to do it. But they are doing this in such a way that shows that they do not treat it seriously. And now the last issue is that actually we see also the impact on this democratic problems at local and national level from national level. I mean, from national level, so negative impact of national politics, democratic backsliding at national level, on what is going on other levels. I told you already about this recentralization process, but what was also present during Law and Justice time, so between 2015 and 2023, was a reproducing of some undemocratic changes from the national level. So, for example, some censorship, firing journalists who criticized the government, and so on, banning some, I don't know, performances in cultural life when they somehow were not in accordance with point of view of governing elites, and so on. But what was also the negative impact was this negative impact of this political polarization and conflict. Because this political polarization and conflict, when it comes to a kind of extreme level, then there's the problem with democracy, because democracy is about dialogue, about consulting with each other different issues, talk with each other, and trying to convince other people to their point of view. But actually, this kind of very deep political conflict between the main parties is coming from national level to lower levels, and leads to the situation that very often there's no chance for any dialogue and consensus, because people even do not want to meet with each other. So not to mention coming to a kind of agreement. And this is problematic. The role of political parties, particularly some clientelistic networks between politics, business, and media, this everything is the impact of very often national level on local and regional level. All right, so conclusions are firstly, we had the democratic backsliding in Poland between 2015 2023. Something has changed after December 2023, but to a limited degree. Also because of how Law and Justice introduced different changes. So many people who are related to this party are still in governing institutions, in judiciary, which makes, of course, problematic to reverse everything in quite a short period of time. Not to mention that the president of Poland still is related to the governing party, also after the elections that took place in 2025, so this year. To see the full picture, once again, we should also take into consideration subnational levels, in which we cannot talk about some democratic backsliding so much, because there was no real process of democratization that was a kind of advanced process at this level. I showed you these problems at local and regional level. And to a large extent, I mean, we had this negative impact of non-national politics on local and regional communities. Here you have some literature that I recommend you. Some of these articles or books are with also my authorship, or I'm co-author of these books. So this is something that it's a kind of selection of literature that I recommend you to read about the Polish case of democratic backsliding at different levels. But this is, of course, also only a kind of selection. Okay, thank you very much. Here I have also a website of my project that also is about everything I told you. Now I'm waiting for your questions, comments. I'm all yours now.
Thank you very much, Adam. It's very interesting how this process, as I told you yesterday, resonates with the Mexican case, that we have a multi-level democracy, and we have some of the same indicators of autocratization. And well, let's see if one of our students have any questions or comments. You're very welcome to make it. So I'm gonna ask you to come front here, so we can. Oh, there we go. We have a microphone there. Thank you very much. Gracias. Allá atrás, por favor. Okay. Oh, okay, okay.
So, ¿se escucha?
Sí, sí. Puedes decir tu nombre y
Hi, first I have to say thank you for your time. I have two questions. As a student of international relations and interesting of legislative power, I wonder what is the role of legislative power at Poland? I don't know if there is a chamber of deputies or chamber of senators there, but if that's the case, what is the specific role in this process of the democracy? And the second question that I have is is there something that Mexico have to learn about this process at Poland? And if Poland has something to learn about Latin America social process or legislative power? That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we collect 2 or 3 questions, Adam?
Yeah, sure.
Ya, aquí con profesora Silvia y de allá.
Gracias. Good evening, Professor Szymański. My name is Cesar Guerrero from Flaxo, Mexico. I would like to ask you, would you say that that Poland is going through a debate between modern and traditional values that is reflected in the current democratic system at both at national and subnational level, based on what you showed us about the differences between the big cities and their integration to the global economy and the rural areas of the country, but also in terms of society, such as religion, immigration. So some scholars in Poland have talked about the difference between pluralism and monism in Polish values. Would you say that this is what we see, or what could explain what we see in this going back and forth between autocratic regime and democratic regime? Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Cesar. Professor Silvia.
Thank you. Silvia Inclán at Institute for Social Research at UNAM. I would like you to comment, please, on participation in this process. One of the main arguments of autocrats is against liberal democracy, and they argue for direct participation and against representation. And would you put, do you think that that people, since you mentioned whether an important factor is that society understands the institutions of democracy, do you think people put more weight on what is being said in the official discourse and the fact that they can participate versus the results they really get in terms of their participation, the effect of their participation? What are your thoughts about how this mechanism operates? People are happy to participate and disregard the fact that their participation is really not being taken into account or does not have any influence or results. Thank you.
Go ahead, Adam.
All right, so thank you very much for this questions. Of course, we can open the second round afterwards. Okay, role of a parliament. I mean, this is we have actually in Poland two chambers of a parliament, so so-called Sejm and Senate. But actually, for a long time, it was so that when it comes to this time of democratic backsliding, it was so that the parliament was weakened because it very often looked like like a kind of automatic voting machine. It means that the government had the majority in the parliament, and everything that was adopted that was proposed as a draft laws was adopted. Of course, something that was proposed by the governing party. After 2019, the change was that the Senate, the second chamber, was taken by the opposition. Nevertheless, the Senate was not strong enough to change anything. Now, after the change of the government, so since December 2023, the situation looks a little bit differently. Of course, the majority rule still exists, and this is something that is at the core of democracy. But what is the problem with the role of a parliament? The problem with the role of parliament is that actually it's, first of all, when it comes to its legislative role, it's still limited in the situation of a kind of political polarization or division of power between the parliament, governing government, and the president, who belongs to different political camp. We have in Poland such a system, which is called for many people a semi-presidential system. For some others, it is not so clear. Nevertheless, the president has veto power, and this is something that we see also nowadays. And this is also something that is one of the reasons why the this undemocratic changes cannot be reversed so easy. Because, for example, when it comes to judiciary system, there are a lot of draft laws that are proposed to heal the situation. So there's politicization of judiciary and so on. But the president, being supported by Law and Justice, declares from the beginning that he will veto this, and it is difficult to reject this veto. So this is the problem nowadays, I think, with the role of a parliament. After the change of a government, yes. So this is when it comes to the role of a parliament. Very quickly and just focusing on one but very important key aspect. When it comes to learning from each other, I think, generally speaking, the problem is, and I mean, in both countries, in Mexico and in Poland, is that we are in the process of learning about democracy, about this importance of democracy. Yesterday, when I had a seminar with at the university, I underlined the problem. I don't know how much it is the problem, or to which extent it is a problem in Mexico, but in Poland, the problem is that we went through this process of political transformation, and we took this for granted, but then nobody thought about development of some learning tools at schools. First of all, civic education that would underline the role and importance of democratic institutions. And this is, I think, the problem. We are still learning democracy. And of course, it's good to learn from each other, not only when it comes to Poland and Mexico, but we can talk also about Poland and Mexico, from some mechanisms that, particularly when we talk about local level, I think very often, of course, I talked about this negative aspects, about this democratic deficits, which does not mean that it's not like this, that nothing works at local level in Poland. And what I see is that, and this is, I think, the difference between the situation nowadays and, I don't know, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, because when I compared Poland with studying in some West European countries beforehand, I saw that we are quite weak when it comes to our involvement in different in this decision-making processes in life of our communities, cities. We are not so much involved, and data showed this in different civil society organizations and so on. Nowadays, I think it has changed. There is more involvement of people. They are also they are also active in this different local democracy mechanisms. But as I said, I mean, there is a kind of frustration that, and this is of course related to the next question, to which I will come in a second, that they are frustrated. People are frustrated. Because of how politicians treat them very often. I don't know what is with my camera, is now becoming crazy. I don't know why it is so sorry for this, because I'm making this, I want to make it. Okay, I hope maybe it will work now. I think what we can, when something works, when it comes to some local tools, including some innovative tools, we have in some cities so-called city panels, which means that people gather from different social groups and they discuss about some important issues for the city and they propose some solutions for some problems. This is something that if it works in one place, of course, it does not mean that it will work in another country, yes, in another city. Nevertheless, this is something that if this kind of innovations are introduced, and the same, I know a little bit about Mexico, but it also, to some extent, is developing at the level of cities. There are quite a lot of publications on this, actually. Then, of course, this is something that we should, of course, not take directly without first testing it if it really works in different circumstances. Then, of course, this is something that can be done. All right, the next issue, I mean, very important issue, the role of this confrontation between modern and traditional values. This is, I think, something that is one of the main lines of division between people in Poland. It's not only in Poland. I did quite a lot of research on Turkey, and there is very similar divisions between this, let's say, more liberal group of people and let's say some people say progressive and conservative, more religious groups of people. And but what I see here when we talk about democracy, I mean, this is also very important, this aspect, this division, not only as an element of polarization, which is of course used by politicians, but also something that is behind the way of thinking of many people towards democracy. There is a book, Disenchantment with Democracy, wrote by Polish political psychologist Janusz Rajkowski. It was published some years ago by Oxford University Press. And he wrote about this, that actually many people in Poland, this is something that I told you during the lecture, that many people in Poland were lost after the political and economic transition, particularly this economic transition. They treated themselves as losers of this political and economic transformation, not only when it comes to material level, so when it comes to economic situations, wealth, and so on, but also when it comes to a kind of such issues like particular identity, sense of belonging. People were very often perceive themselves as losers. Also here, they lost some authorities, and they looked for some authorities, and they looked also for some, let's say, better. They want also to feel more secure in not so much secure situation after economic transformation, first of all, yes, because they were afraid of their future, because they didn't have the best job, they didn't earn the money they wanted to earn, and so on. And how it is explained by Professor Rajkowski is that actually they looked for started to look for some authorities. They they started to look for also for this particular identity, which is related to the sense of belonging to some national community and religious community. Yes, and actually this kind of, I mean, the conservative ideology that is represented by Law and Justice, first of all, was something that was supported by these people. Yes, they felt, yes, this is the party that can give us this sense of kind of security, not only, let's say, physical security, but also this, you know, when we talk about this kind of psychological security, and this is something that was behind also the development. This is showed in many different studies, that this conservative feelings are shared, and opinions are shared by values are shared by many people. Of course, what plays a role here is the religiosity of people as well, obviously, in the role of a church and so on. So this is something that is behind this issue, why also many people support parties like Law and Justice, which actually conducted this undemocratic changes. Apart from the fact that this, once again, this division between within or along the religious, I would say, ideological line between this modernist and traditional conservative people leads to a very crucial problem when it comes to Poland, which is this social polarization apart from political polarization. Yes, and leads to the conflict, to many problems when it comes to from national to local level, I would say. Okay, this is the topic for, you know, for separate lecture, I would say. There are also some other aspects here on some local level, which also have a lot to do with question of democracy, but I will stop here. The question of participation. I mean, this is something that to some extent is related what I said about the problem with civic education, without the awareness of people and the knowledge of how important are different democratic tools, which leads to the situation that they are very often not so active. Although, on the other hand, as I said, I mean, it does not mean that in the long period of time we didn't have some changes, but more and more people started to be active and take part in different mechanisms, not only in elections, not only in referendum that sometimes happened in Poland, but also in this democratic life of a country between elections. So, of course, and this is of course this. It was in the question that many different populists underline this direct democracy mechanism, or semi-direct democracy mechanisms, as something that should be more developed, and not this traditional institutions of representative democracy. But of course, it is very often so that this is just again instrumentalized to get the support. Nevertheless, what I see in Poland is that there are groups of people who want to be involved in, for example, first of all, at the local level, in the life of communities. So they are active. But the problem is that, of course, it is good that people they want to decide about what is going in their cities and so on. But sometimes it goes to, I would say, in case of some cities, it goes to such a situation that, as I said, like in Warsaw, for example, less and less people are interested in these different democratic tools that are to their disposal, because they're frustrated, because they see that politicians don't treat this seriously. On the other hand, still there are groups of enthusiasts who are always active, but this is actually there are usually small groups, yes, of people, which is of course not enough. And we are coming here to, on the one hand, this is of course something that is a result of politicians also rhetoric and expression of position towards different democracy mechanisms. One example, in Poland, in Warsaw, there was something which is called citizen panel that was organized about climate issues, but then some politicians who govern from civic coalition in Warsaw said openly, we don't want to organize it again because we don't think it is something that it is necessary. You can, I mean, you citizens, inhabitants of a city can meet with president can meet with within the sessions of a council and propose something, and you can be consulted about different issues and so on. So this is something that, of course, leads to it's a kind of frustration. This is also reflected in some opinion polls. We conducted one last year, and it is noticeable that this newer tools, democratic tools, participatory budgeting, different modern consultation forms, and so on, they are not so much appreciated, and they're not so much treated as important by citizens in comparison to traditional tools like petitions to the government, local government, and so on. So I would say, generally, in general terms, we see more and more activeness. People want to be, first of all, active in their communities. They want to decide about them, but after some time, of working with different democratic tools, we see this, unfortunately, with fatigue. So less people. On the one hand, there are groups of people who are always active, but on the other hand, there are quite a lot of people who are dissatisfied and they stop participating in, for example, participatory budgeting. I mean, they stop proposing the new projects or vote for this projects afterwards.
Thank you very much, Adam. Well, I guess well, we obviously do not want to take advantage of your generosity and your time. We know it's quite late in Otwock. You said you live in Otwock?
Sorry?
I don't know what time is it now in
It's 10 past 8 p.m.
Okay, so can we do we have a few extra minutes for an extra questions?
I can yes, for me it is okay.
Okay, thank you. So una aquí, a ver, 2 y 3, por favor. Yeah.
Muchas gracias. Dziękuję bardzo, panie doktorze. Dobry wieczór.
Dobry wieczór.
Dobra, zmienię na angielski. Thank you very much, doctor. I am Krzysztof Rosles-Śledzik. I'm living in Warsaw. And I have a question for you. I would like to know what's your opinion about the level of participation in the different electoral processes in Poland, in the regional ones, legislative, European, and presidential elections. And for example, what happened in the latest presidential elections between Nawrocki and Trzaskowski, and what's your opinion about the small, very little difference between both of candidates, and what is the level of the what is the level of the confidence of the Polish society in the electoral institutions there? Thank you very much. Dziękuję bardzo.
Hello and good evening there in Poland. My name is Eduardo. A student of International Relations at the School of Political Sciences at the UNAM. And first of all, thank you very much for your presentation. My question for today is as follows. Before asking the question, I'd like to make a comment because I think it's necessary to say that the democratic regressions we've seen in several democratic countries aren't the exclusive monopoly of right-wing or conservative forces. Here in Mexico, for example, the democratic retreat has been led by Morena party, a self-defined left-wing force. Just to clarify, my question is, many times in processes of democratic regression or backsliding, such as those currently observed in countries like Poland, Hungary, the United States, Brazil, Colombia, or Mexico, the finger is pointed at the paragraph about the governing parties, political forces, or coalitions. But what about the opposition parties? What responsibility do the opposition forces bear in the country's democratic decline? Because let's not forget that despite the authoritarian overtones that the democratic systems we have lived in for the past decade have taken, there are still electoral democracies. And it's the people themselves with their votes who have brought these forces and coalitions to power, reversing democratic advances. What responsibility does civil society also bear as it allows itself to be swept away by these processes of regression? And in that sense, do you think we should study this phenomenon as something that is here to stay rather than as something pathogenic? Well, I insist, the voters have decided so during the elections. Thank you.
Gracias.
Good evening, Professor Szymański. My name is Sebastián Godínez, a student from Government and Public Affairs at UNAM. Do you think that the Polish transition has been finished, or as O'Donnell, Schmitter, and Whitehead wrote, the transition is this time between authoritarianism and democratic that is progressive or is regressive? Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Adam. Please.
All right. So again, important questions, and I can talk about each of them for another half an hour, but I try to be short. All right. The first issue is electoral process. All of these questions actually were important. This first one about this electoral process and this last election campaign and competition between Civic Coalition candidate Trzaskowski and who is actually the president of Warsaw at the same time, and Nawrocki. Here. Yes, you're right that the result was quite close, and actually the first results showed that Trzaskowski won elections, but after some hours, because it was just about some forecasts, not about the results, official results of elections, when it appeared that Nawrocki won. Of course, we can talk for hours about the reasons for this, why this candidate won when just several months before elections the opinion polls showed completely something else. Of course, we can talk about here the role of the question how election campaign was conducted, and so on. Who had better advisors and better strategy for election campaign, but you actually raised quite important issue about this level of confidence towards electoral institutions. I mean, here what appeared, what emerged afterwards after the this first official results were announced, was the problem that actually was visible also previously in other countries, and also was to some extent present in Poland, but here it was quite after the elections was quite noticeable, namely that there were some reports from different electoral commissions that showed that actually not in one but in quite in a large number of commissions, quite a relatively large number of commissions, the results were opposite to what actually were the real voting of people, in a sense that, for example, in one electoral district, Trzaskowski, for Trzaskowski voted much more voters than for the candidate of Law and Justice, but then the results showed something else. I mean, opposite situation, and this is something that somehow put into the question the confidence in particular electoral commissions, that actually people were. I mean, there were some rumors that it was something actually that was somehow organized, which of course always has a negative impact on perception of electoral institutions. Fortunately, it appeared that even if it was the case, it was not something that was a large-scale process, and it did not go into the direction like in some other countries in which actually we also talk about electoral fraud and so on, without actually the real basis for this. Nevertheless, it opened a kind of discussion, which in the case of Poland, I mean, the kind of discussion about confidence in electoral bodies, which in the Polish case has also another level, because another dimension, because in Poland, okay, there are electoral commissions and so on, but there is also the National Electoral Commission that actually does not, at the end of the day, decides about approving the results of elections. It is the Supreme Court that is doing this. And what did not happen in Poland, but this is something that was, there was a kind of risk of this kind of situation, that if the president will not be the peace candidate, then the Law and Justice could use something that was part of the changes made by Law and Justice when they governed, namely that they created a separate chamber in Supreme Court when they governed, Law and Justice, that according to the new law was responsible for deciding about results of elections, approving or not approving the results of elections. And this is one of his chambers, which is recognized as no real court by, for example, European Court of Justice, so by EU institutions. So this is something that of course, is a kind of problematic issue, which was one of the aspects being a result of the changes made by Law and Justice, or reflects this kind of mechanism that were created, yes? That actually, even if they lost elections, they can still count on the body that at the end of the day approves the results of elections. It did not, nothing like this happened because Law and Justice candidate won, so there was no such process that was observed. Very important second question, the role of opposition. I mean, this is something that it is very good question, because always, I mean, also in my research, I'm quite often underline that too much attention is paid to the incumbents. I mean, that when there is a question about the reasons for democratic backsliding and so on, there is, of course, a lot of studies, first of all, on incumbents. I mean, the autocrats and so on. While actually, and this is changing nowadays, because more and more attention is paid to role of opposition, particularly in this context of democratic resilience and the possibility for opposition to change the situation in the country, of course, in terms of working with democratic regime. And I would say that, of course, when we have, I mean, very often the problem, yes, of course, you're right that people vote, and they vote, and the result of voting should be respected, yes. And they vote for the parties who are doing something undemocratic. I mean, in many countries, it is quite substantial part of society. Of course, we have to take into consideration the fact that in many not so democratic countries, there are different electoral malpractices that contribute to this. So they are, first of all, I mean, this access to resources during the election campaign. So it's not about the kind of fraud, but just, you know, opposition is, we cannot talk about equal competition of equal foot when opposition forces do not have the resources that are to disposal of incumbents. And this, of course, weakens the opposition, apart from the fact that, of course, oppositional parties sometimes do not conduct a good election campaign. This, I'm referring here to the first question about Trzaskowski versus Nawrocki. But some years ago, a few years ago, with my colleague, we published one article that refers to another issue that I think is also, it's not so much noticeable, but I think also matters. We wrote the article about unintentional backsliders. So this is about also different oppositional forces, including opposition parties, that they are supporters of democracy. They act against the undemocratic forces, but their activities at the end of the day leads to the situation. And we wrote a kind of conceptual paper, although we referred a little bit to Poland, but it was more a conceptual paper, but something that reflects also, of course, political reality. So there are, I mean, political parties, they support democracy, they act against autocrats, but at the end of the day, they also contribute to consolidating of this undemocratic regime by their activities, or lack of particular activities. And we actually prepared a kind of framework that can be used investigate different aspects here. I mean, that contribute to this unintentional support for undemocratic regime. Of course, unintentionally. The problem, of course, from research is to how to measure this unintentional behavior, but this is another issue. The problem is, I mean, it was very much noticeable in Poland that first of all, the oppositional forces, not only also the media that supported the opposition and so on, they behaved in such a way that at the end of the day, they contributed to this undemocratic consolidation of undemocratic changes. For example, taking part in the same debate using the same rhetoric that polarized the society than incumbents, than autocrats. Just to give one example. So this is the aspect that is not so much studied, also because it is difficult to, as I said, to measure this unintentional behavior. It's always such issues are difficult to measure, but this is something that also should be taken into consideration when we talk about the role of opposition, how much important is the activeness of opposition in actually in the situation that how much they are guilty for this, that the autocrats have such a support, and opposition actually has limited tools to do anything when there's a majority, a large majority that belongs to the governing party. All right, and the last question about the end of if the Polish transition is still an ongoing process. I mean, I would say that transition is, as I said during my lecture, political transition has been more or less completed when we treat this as the change from communist political and economic system to democratic system and market economy system. Of course, in economic terms, I don't see any possibility that we can have a reverse process to non-market economy system. In case of political system, of course, it is the question if we can, if Poland can go, for example, after the next elections, what can be won actually can be can mean that the landslide victory of law and justice. We cannot, and they can govern together with right-oriented party, so-called confederation, which is more right-oriented than law justice. So the question is, if then we can talk about the reverse process that can lead to real autocratization of Poland, in a sense that it will join the group of authoritarian countries. I mean, I think it is in the Polish case not so much possible, because we cross a particular line, and it would be, I think, something that that is not necessarily possible. Why I'm thinking so? I mean, we can, in Polish case, I think we can argue that there's a problem with democratic consolidation. Not necessarily. I would say that this political transition, I understand it as something that is related to establishment of democratic, basic democratic institutions, first of all. So this is something that that more or less works. The problem is with this consolidation, and if I don't think we can have a completely reverse process to completely non-democratic system in Poland. This is something that is related with, I would say, still some checks and balance mechanisms that work in Poland. When it comes to media, for example, it is not like in Hungary. Maybe I didn't mention this, but in Hungary, in Poland, still there are a lot of private media that were not under the control of the previous government. That's why Law and Justice created its own private media. There are quite strong. Still, even if we have this recentralization process, we have still this process. We have still quite advanced decentralization with quite strong, at least when it comes to political and administrative decentralization, strong local and regional governments, and this is something that is. It is difficult to make completely reversal, but we got coming back to the such a situation as we had in communist times when there was no democratic regime. Because firstly, of course, these institutions will be still there. Of course, the question is how they work, who is in these institutions, and so on. Nevertheless. They exist. This is first. Second, I think, as I said, this checks and balance system, although maybe have some deficits, to some extent works, and also worked during Law and Justice rule, which led to the situation that, as I said, some issues that were possible in Hungary were not. For example, in Hungary, concerning media. Were not possible in Poland. Plus, of course, this is also the difference that I see, and my Hungarian colleagues agree with this, that we are also a little bit different with our Hungarian colleagues, or there's kind of difference, that there is this possibility of mobilization of Polish people against some too extensive undemocratic changes that were showed when Law and Justice tried to change the courts. For example, dismissed the old judges because of age, because they didn't belong to the people supported by Law and Justice. It didn't happen because of mass protests that happened. The protest before Civic Coalition won elections also, I think, played a role. So these are the elements, so both institutional, when you talk about checks and balance system, and I think this, when also on the level of society, that, in my opinion, leads to the situation that we cannot come back to time of on completely non-democratic regime like we have in communist times, okay? Because I think it was this intention in this question, because formally, when we look at the literature, we completed this democratic transition. The problem is with democratic, very, very serious problems with democratic consolidation. So institutions exist, but this problem, how they work, okay?
We do thank you for your knowledge, your time, your generosity, and we hope to have you here in Mexico City sometime in the future. What has happened in Poland can be hopeful for countries in Latin America, and we hope that we keep sharing experiences to know how to deal with this autocratization processes. So thank you again, dear Adam, and thank you again to all the people that came here this morning. at the Social Research Institute. Thank you, Adam.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Khemvirg. Thank you all to all students. Good luck with your studies. And yeah, I hope we can meet face to face next year when I finally come to to Mexico City and to visit your university.
I'm sure we will. Thank you again.
Okay.
See you
Thank
soon.
you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.